So yeah, I'm Stephanie. I'm from the Leeds Reclaim the Power group. So I've been involved in fracking stuff along with a lot of people here for about 6 months now. So this meeting is mainly to get people together in Leeds and the surrounding areas that are interested in doing something about fracking, or maybe just learning a bit more about it. So we're going to do several things in the meeting. It's going to be fairly educational, inspirational, all of that stuff. So what we're going to have is Simon from Friends of the Earth, who's going to spend about 15-20 minutes talking about unconventional fossil fuels in the UK at the moment, a bit about the technology behind it and what stage it's at. And then we're going to have just a quick comment on the latest IPCC report, which, as you can probably guess, is like, yeah, we're warming even more and it's even worse than it was last time. But yeah, we're then going to have Kat, who has been down at the protest camp in Balkan for quite a long time, just taking us through how it started, what the atmosphere about camp was like, how the local community started taking direct action to stop the trucks and stop Quadrilla, and finishing with kind of thoughts for where the people that were there are going to go next. We're then going to kind of focus on the north a bit because, you know, Quadrilla's come up north. There's a lot of companies that are about to start drilling in the north. And so then we're going to have some speakers. So we've got Rachel from Salford who's just come in. And I've just been on the phone to a guy from Residents Action on File Fracking, and he's told me a lot of stuff that's going on there, so I'll pass that on. And then we're going to have loads of information on how you can get involved, what things you can do. You know, it doesn't matter what your skills are, how much or how little you want to do, there really is something for everyone, and it's really exciting. And then we're going to have a quick rundown of events that are coming up and what's going to happen, like what's happening in the local area after this. And then we're going to finish with kind of half an hour or more of just discussion and getting to know each other really. So yeah, Simon, do you want?
Just to kind of get a general feeling of the audience. How many people feel as though they feel confident that they know what fracking is and what and what the risks are? Hands up if you feel fairly confident about half. That's good. Probably more, significantly more than the case 6 months ago. And how do people feel about fracking? Kind of hands up if you pretty much kind of don't like the idea, wouldn't have it near you. Yeah, again, fairly kind of significantly more than there was 6 months ago. I was at in Manchester on Monday at the Conservative Party conference. Funny enough, there was quite a significant amount of people who will probably say differently than that, but we'll go through some of the reasons why in a minute. Fracking and unconventional gas. I think one of the key things that we need to know is that fracking and unconventional gas aren't necessarily the same thing. So there's a lot of kind of drilling for gas in unconventional ways which don't involve fracking, but they do involve quite a lot of the same kind of risks and impacts. Solution to our energy needs. That was what the kind of general message on Monday when I was in Manchester was. Or environmental disaster. We shall make our own minds up on that. So what is fracking? Fracking for shale gas is pretty much the developer comes along, they drill a hole in the ground to several hundred feet, then divert that pipe, sorry I was pointing at the screen there, divert that pipe horizontally, and then what they do is basically pump a huge amount of sand, chemicals and water down into that pipe, and then what it does, it basically creates fissures in the rock which releases methane, which is trapped in kind of hard packed shale, with the intention that they then suck that methane up back up the pipe, and burn it to create electricity. There's quite a significant amount of process involved in that. Basically, again, I'm pointing the screen. There's an awful lot of water being shipped in by truck. That's added, as I said, that's added to the chemicals in the sand and pumped down. These kind of fishers, they don't really know where those fishes are going to go, and where the chemicals and the methane and the sand and the water is going to go. And quite significantly, what they're actually doing in a lot of cases is drilling through groundwater aquifers. In Yorkshire, we get something like 15% of our drinking water from aquifers. So there's potential problems around that. Where's it happening? Quite a few places at the moment. It's kind of, in many ways, it's early days, and one of the real problems we kind of face as campaigners is actually tracking what is actually going on. Very much we're relying on work on the ground, kind of doing bits of research, looking through planning lists and really kind of boring stuff actually in terms of that. But actually, what we're looking for is that kind of next planning application. What the developers are looking for is actually to get those planning applications in, kind of sneak them through, not a great deal of public scrutiny around it, and suddenly you have a planning approval. And this is kind of what's happened in Bolcombe. Bolcombe is a case in point where the parish council were aware that they were drilling in Bolcombe, but then they weren't necessarily aware of the risks. So the orange areas on the map are places which are currently licensed for exploration. This is a different kind of process to the planning application process. The licenses are granted by DEC, and in some cases the Crown Estate, to go looking for this stuff. It kind of identifies where there might be potential resources, and companies bid for the rights to do that. The planning applications come along after those licensed areas are given. In some cases, several years after those licensed areas are given, and that's really kind of determined at the local authority level. They wanted to determine this at the central government level several months ago, but we kind of placed them down so that we can't do that. It strip away people's community's rights to oppose planning applications for stuff they don't want. So that's the orange areas. Next year, we have the next planning round, the next licensing round for further applications. And the green area is where we're likely to see the next licenses being given. That is quite a significant swathe of the country. A lot of that will be conventional gas drilling, which is still pretty bad, but a lot of it is going to be shale gas, coal-bed methane, and underground coal gasification. The red stars are coal authority underground coal gasification areas as well. So there's a lot of those around the coast at the moment. It's kind of difficult to get your head around some of the different forms of technology. There is shale gas, which is predominantly, it does rely on fracking, and we've seen in the media the kind of shale gas and fracking becoming almost synonymous terms. And shale gas is that stuff which is several thousand feet down, it's in hard packed shale, it's difficult to get at, and actually quite expensive to get at. Coal-bed methane is in different areas of the country, particularly, it kind of stands to reason, but it's particularly prevalent in areas which do have a history of coal mining. So you can see areas like South Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, and other areas of the country really being kind of targeted. In Staffordshire, for instance, are being targeted for for coal bed methane exploration. And that's, I mean, that carries a lot of the same environmental risks which I'm going to talk about. But it's basically, they kind of drill down and try to release methane from coal beds. Again, probably, I mean, around about half of the coal bed methane that they can get out, they can actually get out without fracking. But in Australia, where coal bed methane has been, and in Australia they call it coal seam gas. In Australia, around about 40% of coal bed methane they get out has to be fracked out. Underground coal gasification, that is basically another dodgy technique, which involves drilling down, drilling horizontally, and then what they do, they drill into the coal beds, which are kind of, it's predominantly off the coast or in places like the Humber Estuary. But what they're wanting to do is then kind of set fire to the coal bed, and then that gasifies the coal, and they can suck the coal up to the surface again. Where they've tried it before, they've actually kind of had real difficulties controlling the fire because once you set fire to coal, it's kind of, it burns. What's the problem? So what's the problems, I should say? As I say, groundwater contamination, both from the release of chemicals going down the pipe, leaking from the pipe, you drilling through groundwater, and the release of methane through those fissures that don't know where it's going to go. It's potential for it to go into the groundwater. The chemicals which they pump down, they're kind of, the drilling companies are fairly kind of, they hold those recipes for the cocktail that they pump down fairly close to the chest. It's around about 400, 500, 600 different chemicals. They say that they're chemicals which you that you normally find under your kitchen sink. Actually, some of the chemicals I have under my kitchen sink, I wouldn't want to drink it. But around about a quarter of the chemicals that we do know about are carcinogenic. Around about half, if consumed, could lead to serious disease and illness. So it's not kind of, it's not necessarily the kind of safe chemicals that which the drilling companies are suggesting are down there. Surface water contamination is another issue. Again, I mean, Balcombe is at the moment they're just kind of drilling conventionally, but we've found out in the last couple of days that one of the streams near the quadrilla site of Balcombe has suddenly turned kind of fluorescent green colour. That's not good. That's not good. But where fracking has occurred and where coal bed methane has occurred, they collect the water in pools. Pools leak out. It creates a lot of contamination on the surface. The use of water, because they're pumping thousands of gallons of water down into the ground, and then that's kind of polluted and contaminated. We are, in some parts of the southeast of England, we are incredibly water stressed. We don't have basically enough water to kind of live on what we're doing, so we're having to import water around the country. And that's a real kind of issue if you've got an industrial process which you don't necessarily need, and I'll go on to talk about that, that actually you should really avoid using stacks and stacks of water. Air pollution, not just from the trucks that are kind of carrying in all the water, but also from the flaring that has to happen alongside fracking and conventional gas. Roads, one of the kind of key things around coal bed methane particularly, but also with shale gas, is that you've got not just one site, you've got loads and loads of different fracking wells here, there and everywhere. So they kind of drill here, drill down, drill over there. They're talking in every kind of fracking site, you've probably got about 100 different wells. And those need to be linked by roads. So you've got massive kind of industrialisation of the countryside, you've got massive road building, and all the issues around that, and climate change. Climate, shale gas and unconventional gas has been kind of relative as being a transition fuel away from coal. What we've seen in the US actually is they've drilled for shale gas, but they're still digging coal out of the ground and exporting it around the world. So they're using shale gas but exporting for coal. So it's additional to what to the coal production that's going on. And actually the real kind of issue around climate change and looking towards going rapidly to a low carbon system is that it's actually deterring investment into renewables, because the investors are looking at the UK economy, looking at George Osborne with his dash for gas, and saying, actually, is this somewhere where we are certain to be able to do business in the renewable sector? And at the moment, it's not. And the desert north. This was a staggering comment by Lord Howell. I read it myself, but it shows absolute contempt for the north. And bearing in mind that Lord Howell wasn't until recently one of the kind of cabinet members in the Lords. He does so happen to be George Osborne's father-in-law, and it really kind of shows a certain degree of ignorance of the values and assets that we have in the north of England. It was rapidly followed by a guy from Arcane Energy, the chief executive of Arcane Energy, who are currently drilling for coal mine methane in South Yorkshire. Basically, he said, "Oh, come back up north. People used to dealing with mining and dirty. That's not the approach that we would take, shall we say?" But what is happening in the north? In fact, it's great to have people here from areas which are being affected, but there's an awful lot happening. There's quadrilla drilling in Lancashire. There's gas wanting to drill in Salford and Cheshire. There's talk about shale gas in North Yorkshire. In fact, there was a really staggering report from the British Geological Survey a couple of months ago, which described the Bowland Shale, which is basically the vast swathe of North of England going down to Peak District, and the large quantity of shale gas which was underground. And it's kind of, that kind of presented a bit of a shopping list to developers that actually this is where they drill, and some of the kind of areas around Pickering, around North Lincolnshire, are probably next in the line for fracking. Coal bed methane, as I say, it's kind of prevalent in South Yorkshire, North Lincolnshire, former coal mining areas who have had it pretty hard in over the years anyway, through industrial pollution from the coal industry. They're going to get it again unless we stop it. And underground coal gasification, there's, as I say, there's stuff happening in the Humber estuary. There's quite a lot of licensed areas off the northeast coast of England, from Sunderland up to Alnwick, and some areas around the northwest. Going back to the map, you can see where those are from the stars. So that's kind of a brief run of what fracking is, what unconventional gas is. Hope it's been useful. We are having an event in York. Unfortunately it's not on the flyer, but there are flyers at the front. Please take one. This event in York is basically an all-day training session, networking session for people in communities faced by fracking. How to build up awareness of the risks of fracking and unconventional gas in your community. how to use the planning system and the legal system to tackle that, and we've got experience. We've got experience with that from taking legal action against Quadrilla and the Sussex County Council, and we are really keen to work with other communities elsewhere in the country, and also getting more knowledge and so about fracking, so you can take it back into your own communities and really spread the word about the risks. So at that point, I shall wrap up. Do you want me to take questions, or do you want to leave that to the end? Or?
If anyone's got any questions now, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I don't think you mentioned, I've got a slight hearing difficulty, but it was one thing which I was listening for and I didn't hear, and I think everything else pales into significance. It was a letter I read in the Financial Times from an expert, and I can't remember his name, which pointed out that the methane leakage from fracking is likely to make fracking far or at least dirtier than coal, possibly far dirtier. Now, to me, if that is true, it it puts a totally different complexion on it, because it's whatever we do in Britain, there's it's going on wholesale in America anyway.
Yeah.
So I wondered, are you presumably you didn't? I don't think you did mention that. Can you comment on that, please?
I didn't, and I think that's kind of wrapped in the arguments around climate change. It's not just about the gas; it's also about the methane release as well. Methane is 20 times more powerful potent gas than CO2 is. We've kind of got to stop that being released into the atmosphere, and whether that's being released into the atmosphere by just releases from the ground as we see, or whether it's actually being burned, and it's still a very, very potent gas, and yeah, certainly that kind of evidence that you pointed to is absolutely right. And consequently, it's far worse than getting imported gas from Russia as well.
Isn't a lot of Russia's gas fracked as well? A lot of the gas that we import is already fracked from other countries. Isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's importing you're supporting fracking if you use a gas cooker or whatever anyway, isn't it? So it's
Yeah.
right.
And yeah.
About the water contamination, have you got any actual evidence?
Yes. This is one of the things which is kind of.
Could you give us an idea? Is it 1 in 10 fracks, or 1 in 100, or 1 in 1,000, or?
What we're seeing is evidence around fracking related activities. So the kind of the drilling is very much part of that. There is evidence from places in the US where they have linked.
I mean, could you give us a percentage, or?
No, I can't, unfortunately, but I mean, certainly.
1 in 1,000?
There's a very high percentage of wells that they drill to frack do end up leaking and corroding, and one of the issues which was raised was around earthquakes in Lancashire. And the earthquakes are kind of fairly minor in terms of their intensity, and there was a lot of kind of messaging about actually they're so light you wouldn't be able to feel them on the ground. Actually, I'm not particularly bothered about whether you can feel the earthquakes on the ground. What is really key is what effect that has on those wells, and how that might potentially lead to ruptures. And we're even in Lancashire, they're having real problems with the integrity of some of the wells. So it's a kind of recipe for many more leaks in the future.
So can you give me any examples of groundwater being polluted?
Yeah, as I said, there's a case in the US where
One case?
several cases.
Several? What? 5, 10?
I don't know the exact figure, but certainly the evidence that is there is looking at the risks of those leakages and what impacts it will have on groundwater contamination. And the fact that there is significant numbers. How many I don't know off the top of my head. We'll find out for you. Certainly, we have to.
Rough idea. Guesstimate.
I'm not a fracking driller, so I don't.
Sorry, I thought you might have some idea what you were talking about.
I do. Can I answer?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not quite finished, so I did have another point as well.
think
No, she's answering your question.
Okay, so,
She knows.
yeah.
So there's been court cases in America where companies.
How many?
I'm going to finish my answer before you ask your
Okay.
next question. There's been court cases in America where companies have said, oh, the gas that you found in your water supply is biogenic. It's
Okay.
not thermogenic. It has a different methane signature. So the gas that we were drilling for, it's not the same gas. And what they were saying was, well, your fractures have caused gas in other areas to contaminate the water supply. And if you watch Josh Fox's documentaries, either Gasland or Gasland 2, then, you know, there's film footage of people's...
The proven hoaxer and liar. Proven liar. Have you seen
Well,
him
what
squirming on American TV?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How many cases of water contamination?
Do I know about maybe?
No, hang on. No,
Sorry.
let me finish the question. How many cases of water contamination do you think is acceptable?
Maybe 1 in 100,000. I think might be reasonable. I don't know how you feel about that.
Depends if I'm living in
Well,
an area that's affected by the one, but there you go. Right.
Well,
Next.
I
Sorry.
guess I actually do know the number. It's 1 in 150. A university in Ohio worked it out. I can't remember the name, but
1 in 150.
1 in 150 wells.
I think if that was the case, that gentleman would have rammed that down my throat straight away, don't you?
Facts are facts, whether someone knows them or not. Please look at
Well, the facts don't come into it.
the facts.
What the facts don't come into it. Sorry.
Excuse
Sorry,
me,
well,
have
sorry.
you got an interest in hearing anyone else speak apart from yourself? Because you're being really rude.
Oh, really? Sorry. Well, I've come to make my mind up. I thought it was a public meeting, and I thought I'd get
A
some
public
facts.
meeting of many people who
Well, I'm
will
asking for
speak.
some facts. Sorry, if does anybody got?
You got phones with the facts there.
Okay.
Okay, there's
Yeah,
a
but
website-
sorry,
There's a website with a huge collation of like data and stuff from various different governmental and non-governmental sources. It's called frackoff.org. If you go on there, you can look at documentaries, you can look at reports in various different places. I suggest you find the actual data rather than anyone bothering to argue. It's
Are you
true, it's not
seriously
true.
suggesting Josh Fox is a serious journalist?
Fox? I said frack off.
Josh Fox, well, on Krakow. Gaslands 1 and Gaslands 2.
I'm just
The
suggesting
question,
that
the
the
question
sources
of
on the
evidence is actually
site,
where
regardless of what the
peer
site
reviewed
is, are real sources.
evidence
Absolutely.
from people like the Environmental Protection Agency in the US,
Absolutely.
who have pinned the blame particularly on some of the cases of
Yeah,
water
exactly.
contamination.
How many with the Environmental Protection Agency?
Next question.
Don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, when they do the drilling, obviously they expect to go through the water levels at the aquifers that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
exactly.
Do they attempt to seal the drill when they go through water? Do they expect, in other words, to have to seal the drills, the pipes that they're putting down, because they expect some sort of water contamination to take place unless they did seal them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I say, the integrity of those wells is open question, and some of the kind of and certainly what we're looking for is looking at the environmental impact assessment and ensuring that those wells are
Right. What I mean is they expect, if they didn't seal them, then they expect massive water contamination. So they attempt to seal them. Now, how good are those seals? How long will they last? As you said, they're also subject to the possibility of earthquakes, cracking those seals. I mean, they can't be, if they do thousands and thousands of drills, then there's going to be a large amount of those seals are going to give way or potentially give way.
Yes, and as I say, we've already seen significant signs of water contamination elsewhere, just both in the groundwater and in surface water.
Yeah.
And even leakages within the wells outside of the aquifer
I
are
see.
significant as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say something about the government's plans to build 40 new gas-fired power stations, and the fact that the new gas-fired power stations that they're planning to build are really linked with fracking, because that's the way they want to get a domestic supply of gas in order to power these power stations. And we know that we need to keep a significant portion of the fossil fuels that we already know about and have access to in the ground if we're going to avoid dangerous climate change. And so building 40 new using fracking to get gas, to build 40 new gas-fired power stations, means that we're using unconventional sources of gas, as well as the conventional sources that we know we have to leave in the ground, and also that we're committing ourselves to using these fossil fuels for the next 40 or so years during the lifespan of those power stations. So I think opposing fracking is really important because it's part and parcel of the government's plans for a major dash for gas, and to convert our energy supply away from coal towards gas, when what we need them to do is to move it from coal to renewable energy. And I'd be interested, I've heard that the planning guidance on fracking is very different from the new planning guidance on wind farms. And that's something that interests me, because in Balcombe, the community have seen the fracking imposed upon them with the full force of the state, whereas people who oppose wind farms, it just gets stopped. And I'd be interested to hear if you know any more about the planning guidance.
Yeah, I think you have pointed to a real contrast in the approach to this. You have the gas-fired power stations, which you're talking about. We've already seen the Committee for Climate Change, who are the independent advisors to government on how we actually hit our carbon budgets. They've actually said that to build all those power stations, it should be Plan Z, not Plan A. And it's basically, to do so would actually wreck our chances of hitting our legal commitments on climate change. The planning guidance is, you could not put planning guidance, two pieces of planning guidance together for energy construction that were so contrasting in their approach. With wind power, with wind, you've got the kind of guidance which says actually you've got to listen to community views. You've got to listen, and if there's any kind of issue around the community and the landscape and the integrity of the countryside has got to come first. With fracking, it's if you want to drill. You don't need to listen to communities. You don't need to listen to their voices. I think there's a real kind of contrast there. And it is a true signal of the way in which the government want to do things in terms of energy over the next 20, 30 years.
Hi, I'm Kat. I might use notes, but I will try and engage with you. I was living at the Balcombe site from 1st of August until September 13th this year. Now I'm living in Leeds now, I'm back here. So during that time, obviously it grew from a very, very small thing to something quite big and possibly beyond what we expected. And so I'm just really going to share that story with you guys. It's so this is what it is. Bit of background information first. So in April 2010, planning permission was granted to Quadrilla Resources Limited to drill a single exploratory borehole near a small village in West Sussex, with a view to later fracking the site if that exploration would prove profitable. The parish council, some of whom did have undisclosed vested interests within the industry, found no problem with the application, passed it, and they hadn't circulated the planning permission prior to the meeting. People didn't read through it. People didn't really know what it was. And then the notice was posted. Next to all the notices for lost cat and having a garage sale, and who actually reads those notices in a village, really? So for a while, nothing much happened, and then due to the publicity surrounding Quadrilla's operations up in Lancashire, where they did have a well fracture and a couple of earthquakes were caused, and that got into the papers, And then people started thinking, oh, I heard something about this fracking thing, and I think they're doing it near here. And people started to look into it and become aware, and they called a public meeting in January 2012, which was attended by PR representatives from Quadrilla and over 300 locals. And from Quadrilla's point of view, that meeting went very, very badly. They were heckled and harassed, and it did not go well. Their PR failed miserably. But from the point of view of the campaign against fracking in that area, that really G'd people up. People got together and it started to gain momentum. There were community groups, independent researching started happening, and the campaign started to take off. By the spring of 2013, Quadrilla had finished their operations up in the north, and they were making preparations to move back down south. They had another public meeting, which also went extremely badly. From the point of view of the local anti-fracking community, they were really starting to get sorted, trying to get organised for preparing for when the drill would come in. By the time G4S Security started their 24-hour round-the-clock security shifts, we had Rig Watch down there, which was local residents. This is all very, very local. This is a village of 2,000 people, and they'd organised all this. So they had people outside the gate waiting and reporting on what was happening inside. And so at 7 AM on Thursday, the 25th of July, a small group of Sussex residents were ready and waiting outside the site entrance. These are some of the local campaigners. And by 8:30 AM, this is the very first truck that was blocked from entering. By 9:30, they were backed up all through the village, and gazebos were being set up next to the gate. By mid-afternoon, there was over 250 people on site. By the end of the day, 16 trucks had been blocked from entering, and what was later going to be termed the Great Gas Gala had started kicking off. So the next day, the count continued to grow, as did the numbers of police on site, which is to be expected. But the community, many of whom had never been involved in anything like this before. This is a very Middle England area. People aren't crazy radicals. They just what they call normal people, nice citizens. Despite the massive police presence, the community continued to blockade using a tree trunk and their bodies to block entrance to the site. But the police moved in, and at 12:30, the first arrests were beginning to be made. Then the police removed the blockade and escorted the very first truck past the angry residents and into the site. Despite 10 arrests that day, residents weren't deterred, and we sort of started settling in for a long, prolonged campaign. Over the next couple of weeks, the camp really started to take shape. It grew and it changed. We had functional kitchens, we had communal meeting spaces, we had a children's tent, we even had the beautiful compost toilets, which was a learning experience for everybody, but very, very necessary. But we did Greenpeace did originally provide funding for some toilets, but they removed that, and so everyone stepped up and sorted themselves out, which was great. The camp expanded further along the road, and what had started off as a very small gazebo later ended up stretching 600 metres up the road on both sides. We also had what we called forest camp for a while, which was up in the field and in the woodland right next to the rig. And this was their beautiful view. Very gorgeous, you pay a lot of money for that sort of view. Unfortunately, they were evicted halfway through the campaign. Unfortunately, before the beautiful tree sit that we just made could be used. Meanwhile, there was also a lot of stuff going on. There was activists from Green and Black Cross doing legal trainings, know your rights briefings, so everybody could be skilled up and not worry about what they didn't know, or what would happen if I was arrested, and how do I avoid being arrested, and what might this mean, what can I say. And people continued to come from all over Sussex to support the camp, as well as from further afield. So here we have from the desolate, unloved northwest. And we also had Dorset, We also had people from Holland and France. We had a postcard from a woman in Pennsylvania, which came to the Balcombe post box. We even had a post box. It's very exciting. And we continue to make life as difficult as possible for Quadrilla to keep everything in the public eye. Every truck that attempted to enter the site, we blockaded. The police operations intensified, with escalating violence around the truck escorts and daily arrests, pretty much. They also started implementing snatch squads, which is when they will suddenly drag people out of communal areas, drag people who are just walking along the road, or in some cases, out of their tents. Clearly, harassment, intimidation is...
So is that people who broke the law being arrested?
That is people that they said broke the law being arrested. So I'm just telling you what happened, and then obviously everyone has their own opinions that they can make up.
Sorry, I was just clarifying that, just in case they didn't break the law.
Yeah, there's people, well, we're still waiting, the people are still in court, so we're waiting to see what's happened. Lots of people haven't been tried yet, so we're presuming them innocent until proven guilty, as is.
Okay.
So, despite the tabloids saying that protesters were an outside influence, they're without
The Independent, it's not a tabloid, is it? Oh, it is tabloid now,
I'm
actually.
sorry, excuse me. I'm speaking, you're not speaking. There will be time for you to have questions.
It's a good job it's not a cod.
If you're not going to be quiet when I speak, I suggest you maybe leave.
Oh, right, okay. I'm chained in.
Okay, would you let me finish, please? Because
Sorry.
there will be... you
Okay.
don't know what I'm going to say. I might say what you want to hear. Who knows? So, despite some tabloids saying protectors are there without the equivalent village, the resistance was being facilitated and supported by the locals. There were many locals on site at the time. There was also lots of people off site doing support work. Marches took place from the village. This is a very small village, 2,000 people. We had hundreds of people turn up to show support. These are some of the arrests that happened. And despite that, these are local residents from the village coming down to show support of that. Free buses were put on to facilitate people getting to and from site. This is the lovely Big Lemon company helping us. And these are some of the lovely people in the Big Lemon. And then, and the stores and equipment and kitchens grew because people turned up with donations. We could not have functioned without people supporting us. It was not just people on the site doing this, this was everybody, this was the whole community. This was local people offering showers, offering computer services, charging batteries, running people to and from court. It was court support, people answering the phone, picking people up from Crawley at 1 in the morning after the bail's been released and taking them somewhere safe. You know, we could not have done this without local people supporting. And as the protest grew, the media gained momentum too, both tabloids and broadsheets. And what started as a local interest story grew, and we got international coverage. We had Hong Kong put it up, and we also had New York Times. And campaigning groups from all over the country began sending in messages of support on the internet and spreading our message. And so from we have Ireland here. We also have Lancashire, and we have River Leicester Against Fracking, sending a little message there. Thank you, Riddle. We also had celebrities turn up sometimes. This is Vivienne Westwood, and of course everybody jumped on her when she came and effectively blockaded the road without anything happening. One woman there. That was great. And we managed to keep the campaign in the news and therefore in the public eye for pretty much continuously for about 2 months, which is really very difficult for an ongoing campaign. This media coverage was down in part to the many and varied and creative ways in which people resisted, because journalists and audiences are easily bored, and pictures of somebody in front of a truck every day is not going to be covered. And so in order to maintain a consistently high public profile, we and remain as big an embarrassment to Quadrilla as we could and continue to attempt to stop trucks coming in, we found many imaginative ways to blockade the road and to engage public interest. So this is going to be going through chronologically, so you get an idea of how things panned out. So this was one of the first direct actions, apart from, of course, putting the tree trunk in front of it. This is on the right. you'll see a young lady who got quite a lot of media interest because she is Chrissy Hines' daughter. Whatever her parentage, she is awesome, and this was one of the very first lock-ons. They're using super glue there. The next day we had the beautiful fracking emergency team turn up in an anti-fire engine, which was lovely. And it did happen to break down in front of the gate, very tragically. And then it took quite a long time to get them off. Later, of course, what got in the media was Reclaim the Power, turned up and had set up a nearby camp in solidarity with us. A lot of national media picked up on this, and there was people saying that there was going to be hordes of professional protesters descending. Like, there's not exactly hordes there at the moment. This is at the beginning, but about 1,000 people did turn up and lend support and show that it wasn't just a tiny minority that were against this. There had been a lot of promotion being done for the Solidarity Sunday March, and people came from across the country, and we knew it would be big, but we didn't know that it would be this big. And to be honest, it was amazing. I had no idea. I don't think any of us did. But we filled the road as far as you could see. There was just people, and it felt suddenly like maybe this is possible, maybe we can make a change. There are a lot of us here, and a lot of people willing to make a long journey, to take time off from work, things like that. The next day, there was a mass blockade. It had been publicised as a day of direct action, and because of this, Quadrilla had actually temporarily suspended work for 6 days, they said they would, which effectively meant that we stopped them working for 6 days, which was a result, as far as we're concerned. Hundreds of people took part in this blockade. This you'll see is actually people that came down from Disabled People Against Cuts, showing solidarity. They locked themselves to one of their group's wheelchairs. This is a multi-lock-on, which also took the best part of the day to remove. And it was a very hot day as well, so, you know, hats off to those guys for getting sunstroke. Lord Howell found his house put up for shale. Some of the actions were coordinated but were off-site. This is in Quadrilla's headquarters, where in a terrible breach of office safety, somebody has managed to slip and attach themselves to a filing cabinet. This is Bell Pottinger, who were the PR agents for Quadrilla. They also did PR, I believe, for Pinochet. They were caught undercover, recorded, admitting that fracking lowering fuel prices, and I quote, was total utter bullshit, which they did regret saying when that was broadcast on a loop from a loudspeaker above their front door. Yeah, and of course it did take a little while to sort all that out. Meanwhile, back at the camp, it was a good atmosphere, lots of people feeling very supported, were holding the space. The police tried to move us on several times and people resisted and managed to keep the space. But then the police decided that they had enough, and they turned this into this. There were 30 arrests that day. Some of you might recognise this lady, who is a Green MP, Caroline Lucas, for Brighton Pavilion. Her son was also arrested. There was a good photo that went up of the police using pressure release techniques on him, and him not liking it at all. The protest was on every news channel and covered in every broadsheet and also the tabloids. And for us, it was a really physically and emotionally exhausting day. The police presence for the next few days was extremely high. They had Met police in full riot gear escorting the trucks through. So we sort of took a bit of a break from actions and continued to try and stop the trucks and to make our disapproval felt, but nobody did anything. Nobody did anything arrestable for a while, which didn't stop the arrests, of course, but we did have musical interludes, though. We had a band come down and play for us, which was great. And we also had a Belt It Out Balkan, which was one of those public events that people would come to, bring the whole family. It was one of those family-friendly things. We had theoretically permission to use the road, and so many people turned up to show support. 2 weeks later, we started again. This is a local guy who managed to attach himself to the top of a tanker. He didn't have a bus card with him, which was a bit of a problem, because bus card is something we give out to people that has lawyers' numbers on it. But what we did have was a little toy remote-controlled plane, and so we flew the plane over the police lines and dropped the little bus card to him. Sadly, the plane also dropped some super glue to him in a naughty fashion, and so the plane was taken away by the police. They haven't given it back yet. And also the person that flew the plane was taken away by the police as well. I'm hoping that he's out, but we still haven't got the plane. The next day, we had a local environmental scientist chain herself to the gate. She only lived 6 miles away, and she thought she'd tried everything else already, and thought she had no other option. And she'd never done anything like this. Then we had a day off, which was nice because it was sunny. And then the next morning was a beautiful tripod situation, which was great. That took a really long time to clear. That was over 5 hours, and in response, the police implemented a Section 14, which is extremely restricting on your right to movement, free assembly, and protest. And they were essentially stopping people from crossing the road, stopping people from going to the toilets, arresting people for looking like they were going to step into the road. You had to actually hear it for it to apply to you. So people that had arrived after they'd spoken hadn't actually been told by the police, and so legally they weren't bound by it. But of course, the police assumed that they'd heard it, and there are still cases going on there. And then there was the tragic case of a young man slipping in the road and then delocking himself by mistake to a caravan, which had also slipped into the road as well. It's amazing the number of coincidences of things falling in the road. This took up most of the afternoon. During this period, the council had been attempting to evict by various methods, and we took the case to the High Court in London, where we won, which was great. They were told that the council were told that their arguments were seriously flawed, and we were given leave to remain for 10 days after Quadrilla had left, because by this point Quadrilla had finished their exploratory drilling and they were beginning to pack down and making ready to move up north. And so we were able to go back knowing that we weren't going to have to leave, we weren't going to lose all our possessions, and we could start making plans to wind up the campaign here and begin again somewhere else. We also picketed the shale gas event in London, and meanwhile, back on the road, a transit van broke down, together with the people inside attached to barrels of cement. And then there was the mysterious appearance of a washing machine, which I still do not know how they managed to get a washing machine full of concrete into the road without the police knowing. You can see they just sit it up there, and they look rather annoyed and surprised, but I don't know how they got it. It's got no wheels. It doesn't work anymore. And then on September the 28th, there was the 68th day of the blockade, and the last piece of equipment had left. Quadrilla had packed up, they'd taken their drill, they'd taken their equipment, they'd cleaned up, and there was one last, although accidental blockade, which was when the back wheel fell off the police van as he was trying to leave, which was, I have to say, which was beautiful. We thought it was hilarious. So that was it. Then people were tatting down and packing up and taking away everything that had been put there. There have been over 100 arrests, it's nearer to 120. Many of them are still going through the court process. Some of these people were experienced campaigners, Many of them had never been involved in anything like this before. People came down with preconceived ideas of what they thought an activist was, you know, the sort of person, sort of hairstyle they have. And they ended up staying overnight, or they ended up staying for weeks, and they ended up realising that the kind of person a protester was actually them, which was really beautiful to see people become empowered and realise that they can take action that they don't think they could do, and they could interact with people from all sections of society. I mean, we had everybody there. We had Conservatives against fracking with their very nice tent right next to the anarchists. Well, with a bit of a gap. So, you know, we're not stupid. It wasn't easy. There were like arguments and there were endless meetings because we were living on the side of a road. We didn't know each other. Often we didn't trust each other to begin with. You know, we were under constant surveillance by the police. We were being harassed and in some cases assaulted, and watching our friends also being harassed and assaulted. And there was often times, I'm sure, when everybody thought, no, I did what on earth am I doing here? You know, when you're cold and you've been pushed over and the truck's just gone through anyway, and you're like, what on earth? What's the point? But, you know, there were good times. There was big open mic nights and cook-ups, and we had songs and poetry at the gate in front of the police. And even though we didn't manage to stop the trucks from entering or the drilling from taking place or them from leaving to go somewhere else, I think we really did achieve a lot because of us, Quadrilla or iGas or any other energy company or the government can't push through these policies under the guise of public ignorance. You know, we've raised an issue now, and it can't be swept under the carpet again. And so while the possibility of fracking does remain in this country, or indeed anywhere else, because obviously it has had a massive effect in Australia and also in the States as well, will the people that think that this is wrong must say that it is wrong, and we must continue to shout and agitate and misbehave. And join together to make our words and our actions louder and stronger, because there isn't really any other way that we're going to make corporations and the governments that support these corporations realise that there are actually some things that are a little bit more important than their share profits. And
so I'm from Frack Free Greater Manchester. We've got two groups. We've got Say No to Barton Moss, which is going to be the first site to be drilled, and we've got Frack Free Greater Manchester, trying to encompass a larger area and get more people involved. Our story is pretty much the same as how Balcombe started. We've known for a while that iGas were going to go after Barton Moss, and then all of a sudden we read in the Telegraph that actually they're starting next month, and it caught us all a bit unawares, but we've managed to really pull back, get people involved quickly. They've now announced that they're going to do a public consultation on the last remaining licence that they need, and that closes on the 17th. So our job now, we're trying to slow them down on that. Overall, we don't think there's a way of stopping it all together on licensing. We can slow them down, we can cost them a lot of money, but in the end, we know from other campaigns in the local area that the government will override us in the end. So we're also planning for what else we can do next. We had our first public meeting last week. We'd arranged it in less than a week, and we had over 70 people turning up. It was in a really small area of Eccles, but people came from all over. We're now breaking down into groups. We've got people working on licensing, looking at the permits. We've got other groups doing public outreach. The main thing on my part is going knocking on people's doors in the local area and talking to them, standing in the precincts, handing out leaflets. And you'd be amazed, like you said earlier, 6 months ago nobody had heard of fracking. Now because of Balcombe, I stood in one of the poorest areas of Greater Manchester. Everybody knew what fracking was. The vast majority were against it. A few said, oh, but it's going to bring jobs. As soon as we told them that it's not going to bring jobs, and we went into the facts and we busted the myths, there's nobody in that area that is not going to help stand up to this. So that's where we're at now. We've just started, but we're really, really positive. We think it's going to be quite a big campaign. They've applied for another licence just over the road in Davy Hume, right next to the motorway. Another thing about our area, they might say that these earthquakes are really small. We're on so many mines, all the old coal mines and pits around us. that we really can't afford earthquakes. So that's a brief thing. I'll take questions as opposed to me just whittering on at people.
Yeah, are these test sites like Balcombe, or all these actual sort of fracking drilling sites actually looking for the methane gas?
Yeah, they're test sites. They say they're looking for the methane, but they're going down to the shale. They're trying to be quite cagey about what they don't really want to talk about fracking. Because they're cagey, we don't fully know what they're going to do, but we believe that basically they're same as Quadrilla, they're an exploration group, and what they want to do is find it and then sell on the sites to people that will come and frack.
Yeah, right.
We don't want to get to them. There's no point in exploring when we're not going to let you frack our area.
It's still early days, we'll have a chance, yeah. Thank you.
Just a general question, really. The areas which they've been exploring or fracking in, are there any kind of patterns as to the kind of people that live there? Like, has it been mainly like, for example, areas where a lot of people are poorer? I know you were saying like Balcombe's like quite middle class, but in general, have you seen any patterns in where they've been fracking and the demographics of the people who live there who've been affected?
I think I was quite surprised that they went for Balcombe first because it is quite a middle class place. I don't think there is a pattern, but the sites near us are quite much poorer areas.
Hi, you mentioned facts. Have you any facts on water contamination?
I think we had that answered quite by a good number of people. Do you know what? Google is your friend.
Okay. Yes, unfortunately. I've been searching on Google and I'm struggling.
Try Google Scholar, it's got links to all the academic.
Scholar?
Google Scholar.
Scholar.
It searches academic journals and you'll have references cited for everything. It's really useful.
Another answer to that is as well, one lot of contaminated water is too much contaminated water in my eyes. So, Claire, I think you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what people in Leeds can do to support people in Greater Manchester and Salford, and yeah, what kind of solidarity can we offer you?
Well, we're doing a lot of networking, like all of our groups, and it'd be great to keep in touch with Leeds. Like we're keeping in touch with RAF and REEF and everybody. On the 20th, like helping us with community outreach would be a great help. On the 20th, we're doing the Big Moss Bird Watch because Barton Moss is a big bird watching area. I'd never actually been, and I think a lot of the community didn't actually know it's there. And now we're trying to open that up and bring people. So just coming over, helping, having feet on the ground is really important while we can, and helping us boost up the amount of people in the area that know.
So could I ask, are you willing to break the law? Sorry. Are you willing to break the law?
Am I?
I do.
Personally, or I think we've got quite a wide range of people. There's a lot of people who are like, let's get ready for a camp. There's a lot of people ready to block roads. There's a lot of people who want to go a legal route and look at permits. I think with most campaign groups, it's quite.
Are you willing to threaten and intimidate people like that?
There was a question behind you before you.
I've just got two questions. So, first of all, what area of Manchester was it? And second question is, there's various arguments against fracking, the risk of water contamination, the risk from earthquakes, the whole issue of renewables, where we should be switching from the sort of non-renewables to renewables, and also the issue of climate change. What was the main argument that convinced people in that area to oppose fracking? What were the sort of debates that you had with people in that area?
I think a lot of the environmental damage, like there's not as much talk about climate change, but the environmental damage that we've seen happening in America has definitely been one of the big problems. The earthquakes, Blackpool's only 40 minutes up the road from us, so we know about the earthquakes. They're all talking with local groups, it's in our local media. Sorry, I forgot your first question.
Sorry, what area was it in Manchester?
So Salford isn't in Manchester. Never ever. So Salfordians don't like that. We're out part of Greater Manchester. And the other area is Davyhulme, which is Trafford, but part of Manchester.
I'd love to be able to look at your experiences. How do you best publicise this campaign? Because I can't commit to coming out to the campaign every day, but I'd love to know what the best methods to build support for any fracking measures in Yorkshire based on your experiences.
I think there's different ways. Social media is a really great way of getting the message out there. But we're going old school again, as I say, getting feet on the ground, knocking on people's doors and asking them what they think, and talking to them about, and if they're listening to what the local companies are saying, busting all those myths. I think that's the best form of communication.
Will you use
Sorry,
intimidation
Sophia, I've got the hand up.
and threats?
I was just wondering what you say to people who ask you or say when you need the gas for energy?
I think nobody's saying that we want to 100% get rid of gas right now. I think we're starting with the wrong question. I think the first question should be how can we stop runaway climate change? And then we start trying to set our energy policy in around that.
And just to kind of highlight that, we use some the Department for Energy and Climate Change's modelling tools about how you could actually get what the energy mix would look like if you did X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's more than just 3 options. And basically what it said is that you could get to, by 2030, you could get to a situation where you can keep lights on, keep energy affordable, and have a 75% renewable mix. So, and alongside energy efficiency measures, I mean, there is no need to frack. It's quite clear that it's there.
I've heard that all this fracking gas is going to be sold on the open market and that British people are not going to benefit one people.
Yeah, so the Bloomberg New Energy Finance have done some studies on this, and Lord Stern, who's quite a leading economist, said that David Cameron's claim that it would bring down bills was baseless economics. And yeah, we are connected to European markets, and these are private companies who are able and intending to sell their gas to the highest bidder, which might not be a domestic company. So it's quite likely that we might not see any of the shale gas in this country.
What was the date of the bird watch?
The 20th of October.
Thank you.
Do you have leaflets for that down here?
We haven't had them printed yet, but
Okay, well,
it is on Facebook if people want to find it.
That's brilliant.
Maybe we should have a date. Yeah, it's a really family-orientated event as well. We're hopefully going to have face painters. We've got little birds that we're going to hide in trees for the kids to find. Sheets of paper with pictures of different birds that kids can tick off when they've seen it. So it's really, we're really aiming to open up Barton Moss, let the local community know it's there, it's for their use, and that fracking it is not really the answer. To come back to your question, I personally don't believe in violence.
Will you use violence and intimidation? No, sorry, not violence, sorry, that's what. Threats and intimidation, like was used at Balcombe.
In which instance?
Well, would you like my source? It's The Independent. There's an article in The Independent about people being followed, photographed, threatened. We know where you live. You're not going to get away with it.
Which people was this that were being threatened?
Workers on the site. People manual working class males, I think.
Were being
threatened. Yes.
And harassed.
Yeah.
Personally, I didn't.
Every day.
Okay,
non-stop.
So I was there.
Yeah.
For a long time,
okay.
non-stop,
Right.
and I didn't witness
any bad language, any threats?
I did witness bad language.
Right.
I also witnessed people being harassed and intimidated, but that was always by the police.
Okay, right.
I did notice people saying get a different job to people as they entered the site.
Oh, you didn't hear we know where you live?
I never heard that.
20 people taking photographs?
Yes, we did take photographs of the trucks as they came in. So
no, on people leaving the shift after work.
Yes, we took photographs of people leaving in cars so that we could trace which companies were supplying equipment to quadrillas so that people could...
Anyway, if you've any doubts about it, have a look in the right-wing rag, The Independent.
I didn't actually give you an opinion of my opinion of The Independent.
Maybe some facts as well, you could bring us some facts about that.
No, there you go, there you go.
Well, the question is kind of related Is there...
I beg your pardon?
I want to listen to this guy's question, what she's got to say. Let's not engage him.
Sorry, it's a bit inconvenient, is it?
It's a bit annoying.
Well, I'm surprised I've asked for some facts. I'm not surprised. I'm going to go. Thanks very much, and sorry about that. All right. Have a good meeting. Sorry if it was inconvenient.
We're going there.
Who's paying me to be here today?
I've come with an open mind, believe it or not. I was waiting for some killer facts to change me.
Well, Google is your friend. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, he was halfway through a question, wasn't it?
The question was just if there has been any attempt by the campaigners and the protesters to arrive to the workers through, I don't know, trade unions or other ways in order to involve them in the actions, coordinate with them. And I think it's kind of related to what trade unions could try to do.
People who, we had some really interesting representation from trade unions at Reclaim the Power camp. We had some people from the RMT come along, so people who are quite high up in the RMT come along, and it's the rail workers union, and they're starting to talk about green bans, which is when a union will collectively decide that workers will refuse to work on certain projects for environmental reasons. And there was a fringe meeting at the TUC conference talking about that and talking about fracking, which was co-organised by Reclaim the Power, No Dash for Gas, and various unions. And yeah, certainly the conversation is starting to be had with people in trade unions and with union organisers, and really keen to kind of get the message out into workplaces, particularly to engage people in sectors where they're likely to be called upon to make decisions about whether they want to work on fracking or not. And I think it's actually, there's quite a lot of potential if enough workers are interested to kind of take collective action in that way.
Yeah, I'm in Unite, and many thousands of years ago I used to be in Nalgo, and both of those... Sorry, what's that? Nalgo. It's a predecessor of Unison. It existed in the, I think, the Neolithic era.
I was born just after that.
Some of us remember it well.
Yeah. Both of those unions have workers, particularly in nuclear power. So although they have generally good policies about renewables, they will not touch that particular issue. And that's the same kind of problems we may get here. So I think Claire is absolutely right, but it is a long, long haul. Unite has nominally good policies on the environment and climate jobs and energy, but...
I think the difference with this may be that this is a nascent industry, and so the jobs don't exist already. We're not protecting jobs that already, unions are protecting jobs that already exist and people who are members that are already working in fracking specifically. So there's more potential for there being some kind of collective action.
I know with TUC as well, they're doing a big campaign on 1 million climate jobs and really trying to push it that way and campaigning, as opposed to campaigning against, campaigning for something.
Sure. It's a little minor type. Sorry.
Oh no, go on, you say first.
It's only a minor point. I think it's another thing, it's a long-term thing. That I remember sitting on a train back from Aberdeen last year, and this happened to be an oil worker taking the train back to Newcastle. And he used to work in the coal industry. And then when the coal mine shut down, he moved to oil rigs. And I was just listening in on the conversation, I wasn't taking part. But I mean, in a sense, you can see it's his job and why he would defend oil drilling in his job. And I think the long-term thing is we've got to find jobs for these people in renewable energies, and we can't do that here now. But we've certainly got to try and push people that way as much as we can.
I'm gonna let you take a couple more questions, and then I'm gonna feed in from RAF, who are also in the same area, and because I want people to be able to get into groups and have more in-depth conversations.
There was one.
I was just going to say my experience within unions and stuff. I mean, they do have green networks that people have said, but my union specifically focused on a very local campaign. It wasn't environmental, but it was linked to a closing of one of the job centres in a particularly deprived part of London. And I think maybe approaching, rather than trying to go up top, but approaching unions through their branches or through their local trade union council and seeing what they can do from there might be a more effective way. than going straight, you know, than, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that you probably will be able to get support from like larger campaigns within the union, but on a local level, like, I mean, you might even be able to get donations from different union branches towards your campaign.
The TUC have been quite involved with this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's actually a comment, not a question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
It's a comment about the rude man who just left, and it's a constructive comment. I'm coming from the activist perspective. I was not an activist in this particular issue so far. I was an activist in other issues like feminism and education and stuff like that. And although this man was really rude in the way that he said things, I think there is an important point in terms of advocating and putting our message out there, which is, I think that, you know, statistics and numbers really have to come forward, like in a meeting like this, for example. Like, we can't point to Google and stuff, because people will Google. You know that even Google is corrupted in a way. What kind of information comes up when you type it in, according to what is your search history and stuff like that. So it's like, we can't leave it at that. We have to really be clear with our facts and just put it out there. And I'm sure that here many people did research on this, and I think it would be great if it would be like the first thing to say, so it's in this many cases, and that's really a problem. And the other reason why I think that's very important is because, I'm going to be like just one sentence more, is because I think that with energy, one of the big problems is that at the moment there is bad and there is worse. So it's very important to know if it's 1 in 150 or it's 1 in 1,000, because then it will be easier to decide what is bad and what is worse and what is even worse. You see what I mean? So
just to answer that, I think he was here just to try and detract from the meeting. The statistics he was asking for, while people may have an idea and it might be 150, the companies themselves are hiding a lot of it. There's a lot of people who have maybe taken the companies to court and now are no longer able to talk about it. So, yeah, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been as rude to him and go and Google your friend, but I think that somebody like that who's trying to just detract from a meeting, and he knew if he wants to.
I understand completely. I was just,
yeah. And then this is the last one.
Rachel, thanks very much. It's really interesting to know what's happening in other parts of the country, and I'm really interested to know what's happening on the other side of the Pennines. Simon mentioned Cheshire, which contains George Osborne's constituency. Are things happening around there, or I mean, Cheshire's quite a different sort of place, isn't it?
I think there are some. I don't know about the licensing there, but I know that Greenpeace have done a few campaigns in George Osborne's constituency, and Simon might actually know a bit more about this.
I think, again, I need to check where it is, but
I'm gonna like show some maps in a bit. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna if you open Firefox, there might actually be some in the other tabs.
The trouble is keeping an eye on all the licenses, because who really goes looking for every single license? People do now.
Is your MP involved in your campaign?
So we've got 2 MPs for Salford. One is Barbara Keeley, who has just come out against fracking. The other one's Hazel Blaze. Just useless.
yes.
Well, thank you, Rachel. That was really good.